Hello, and thank you for joining our Teaching for 21st Century webinar brought to you by the David Hobbs Freedom Center and the Glazov gang. I'm your host, Annie Cyrus. Please use the Q&A box on your screen if you have any questions, and I promise we will answer those as soon as a very special guest presentation is over. And I do have a special request from our speaker this evening. He has asked me to ask our audience, don't be shy. Go ahead and ask hard questions and feel free to challenge him. On that note, it is my privilege to introduce our speaker this evening. He is Dov Hikind. He is the founder of Americans Against Anti-Semitism. He served in the New York State Assembly for 36 years as an outspoken advocate against discrimination, anti-Semitism, Holocaust denial, and human rights violation. Hello, Dov. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
I'm delighted to be with you. The saga of hate, of anti-Semitism, of, I think, a more appropriate Jew hatred. I've been dealing with this sort of all of my life. 36 years in the Assembly, since I left the Assembly 2 years ago. Prior to that, for many years, you try to understand the hate. You try to make sense of where it's coming from, and how to deal with it. Everybody's been talking my entire life about education. We need to educate the public. We need to educate people. And Jewish organizations and others have spent God knows how much money to educate people. And with all the education, look where we are. I mean, the reality is that just in the past couple of years, look, I just want to point out that all this is very personal to me, because, my mother, my family went to Auschwitz in 1944. It's very real to me. In 1944, my mother living in Czechoslovakia with her mother family, they knocked on the door. Everybody got along with their neighbors, their non-Jewish neighbors, but one day it all ended. One day, because of Jew hatred, nothing else. My mother, her family were rounded up and ultimately put in cattle cars, like millions of people, men, women, and children. And my mother ended up in Auschwitz, where her mother and siblings and nephews and nieces, little children, little babies, they were of no use to the haters, the ones who hated the Jewish people. And they went straight to the gas chambers on the day that my mother arrived in Auschwitz in 1944. So Jew hatred, hating the Jewish people, hating people, period, is something that has tremendous consequences. And therefore, to not take it seriously, to not deal with it, is a really very dangerous situation. And, when I left the New York State Assembly, I had plans. They were to fight anti-Semitism. I had other plans after spending my entire life, being involved as a public official. But literally, if you go back to a little over 2 years ago, suddenly there was an outbreak of hatred towards the Jewish people. I think if we remember back, America watched people who were identifiably Jewish by the way they dressed, etc., were just being assaulted in the streets of New York and other parts of the country, to the point where it was unprecedented. The numbers were so high, according to the FBI, according to the New York City Police Department, things that we have never seen before. Individuals just walking over to Jews and just beating on them for no reason. And using slogans, anti-Jewish slogans, hateful slogans. I remember looking at some of this, because thank God for video surveillance cameras. Otherwise, we'd never know who the perpetrators are. Often people are not caught. But thank God, we saw the perpetrators going back 2 years ago. And in most cases here in New York, in the tri-state area, in almost every situation, They were young minorities who were assaulting Jews. And I was looking at that. And by the way, no one dealt with it in the sense of admitting who was committing, who was doing the bad stuff. Everybody, if you go back to that period, everybody wanted to blame Trump. The liberals, the progressives, the radicals, the Democratic Party, blame Trump. That was the easy way to deal with it. And I remember looking at everything going on and saying, wait a second, I see the perpetrators. They're not the alt-right. They're not look, there's a lot of hate on the political right. We know that. That's not an issue. But we saw the perpetrators, we saw who they were, but no one was willing to talk about it publicly. And it never got the kind of attention that other hate gets. Unfortunately, and sadly, there's a double standard when it comes to anti-Semitism. If some of these things that have happened to Jews would have happened to people in the Black community or to the other protected communities, I mean, the world would be turned upside down. I can only imagine what would be going on. And I can only imagine all the discussions on CNN and MSNBC and on and on and on about what's going on in the streets and what's happening there. But when it came to Jews, it was very, very different. It just did not get the attention that it was supposed to get. And I got to be very honest with you. I'm trying to figure this out. Being involved all my life and watching this hatred, trying to understand, how do you deal with it? We've talked about education, and as I said before, where have we gotten? Where are we? So how do we deal with this? What's going on? Literally, the last 5 or 6 weeks, the things that were going on in this country, the hatred directed against Jews, connected to, the excuse connected to the events in the Middle East, Israel and the terrorist organization Hamas. I was in Israel. I went to Israel to show solidarity, literally in the beginning of the war. In fact, my first flight on Delta, I was booked to leave on 3:30 in the afternoon, I remember, on a Tuesday. And guess what? I'm sitting at the airport and they're telling me the flight is delayed. And the next thing I know is the airport in Tel Aviv has been closed because of missiles that were falling in the vicinity. And suddenly Delta canceled its flight for security reasons. That was, and the next day I got to Israel. I don't give up easily. And I got to Israel and I saw what was going on there. I saw mothers carrying their babies, running to shelters, because when the siren goes off, people in America, all over the world, or most places in the world, in Europe, people have no clue what it's like to live in a community in places in Israel like Ashkelon, Ashdod, Sderot, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. People living just like everyone lives in New York, Los Angeles, and Washington. What it means to hear a siren go off. And that means you have 12 seconds to run for your life. I mean, it's beyond comprehension. You got to imagine this, that if God forbid our communities were being bombed with missiles, 4,500 missiles directed against the people of Israel, against a democracy. And boy, is Israel a democracy. I mean, look at the elections in Israel. Look at the parliament in Israel, made up of all these parties, including Arab parties. An unbelievable situation of democracy in the Middle East with regard to the state of Israel. And I was in Israel watching what was going on with the media and watching these radical members of the United States Congress like AOC, radicals, people, I don't know if they're just ignorant, stupid, or don't give a darn. I'm not sure which one it is, but their language, their attacks, calling Israel an apartheid state. What in God's name are they talking about? And I have to tell you, all of these people, with the statements and the things that they say and the hatred towards the state of Israel and towards the Jewish people, has all contributed to an outbreak of hate all over America, on the left, not on the right, on the left, okay? That I have not seen this kind of hatred, I must tell you, in my lifetime. I've seen a lot, okay? And anti-Semitism has always been there and will always be there. I get it, okay? I mean, that's a whole different discussion. Why? You know, the question of, why do you hate me? I'm a Jew. Why do you hate me? You don't even know me. I might be the nicest guy in the world. You and I may agree on almost everything, but I'm a Jew. So therefore, hate. And that's what we watch unfold in America. And you have members of the United States Congress today, quite a few. You know, I mentioned a few names, but there are a bunch of others who just, like I said, I'm not sure what it is. Do they know their history? Do they know the facts? Have they studied? I would bet, you know, I wish I could debate any of them. You know, when you and I spoke, I said, you know, I want people to challenge me. I want people to you know, ask me the tough questions. Whatever's on your mind, don't hesitate. Don't be afraid. We need to have, and we don't, honest conversation about what's going on in the world, what's going on directed against the Jewish people. You know, if I asked 10 people in the street right now, I went out and I asked 10 people, how many Jews are there in the entire world? You know, everybody's so consumed with Jews, you know, attacking Jews, beating up on Jews in France and England and Belgium and in America, you know, all over the world. You know, Jews. We got to get a Jew. We got to beat up on a Jew. You know, satisfaction. You know, beating up on a Jew. You know, how many Jews are there in the entire world? By the way, how many people are there in the entire world? So the answer to the question is there are approximately 8 billion people in the world. I mean, we're not there yet. We're getting there very soon. We're close. The total number of Jews in the entire world, I mean, most people just, I actually did this on video asking people, and I would ask people, how many Jews are there? Oh, 100 million, 150 million, you know, 80 million, all kinds of numbers, you know, 15 million in the entire world. That includes the state of Israel, 7 million, America, 5 million, okay? The rest scattered all over the world. That is the entire Jewish population. And it is just remarkable that you have this place called the State of Israel. And again, I know we're not doing a program about the history, you know, and you know, Palestine and what is Palestine and who are the Palestinians. By the way, you know, the original Palestinians, we know about the Palestinians. The original Palestinians, before 1948, when the Jewish state was created, Jews living in Palestine were Palestinians. Everybody was a Palestinian. If you lived in Palestine, you were a Palestinian. And, you know, it's a different discussion in terms of the history and what happened and what's going on today. And, but the outbreak of hatred, of anti-Semitism by the haters, by members of the United States Congress. And the worst part of it is that you have so many so-called, I call them decent people who should know better. You know, Omar Tlaib, AOC, a bunch of other radicalized members of Congress, who, by the way, not only hate Israel, I just want to tell you, they're not great fans of America either. They're not too thrilled with America. Now, I'm not saying the US of A is perfect, but who is perfect? Do you know anyone who's perfect? I don't know anybody. You know, we all try to do better, and America is the only country in the world where people from all over the world want to come into America, right? Isn't that true? It's so bad in America, according to some of these radicals in the Democratic Party, that everybody wants to come to America. Look at our borders. Look at the disaster going on. Everybody wants to come into this horrible country. So my issue with the radicals on the left, who are anti-Semites, who have such hatred towards Israel and towards this country, that's one thing. But the decent people in the United States Congress, I mean, Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House of Representatives. I mean, when you have someone like a member of Congress, Omar, just recently indulging in the kind of language that is beyond comprehension when she talked about the United States, our country, and Israel, and created a comparison with Hamas and the Taliban. Every American should be furious. Every American should demand that someone like her should be removed from the committees in Congress that she's part of. Look, she was elected. There's nothing we can do about that. You know, people talk about, we got to get rid of her from Congress. No, doesn't work that way. She got elected. She will stay in Congress. But how in God's name, you know, do the leaders of the Democratic Party, how do they let Omar get away with what she has done? And you know what? When you don't do the right thing, it comes back to bite you again and again. Because with Congressmember Omar, it goes back to a couple of years ago when she talked about the Benjamins. Well, first she talked about, you know, we Jews hypnotize the world. I didn't know that until she said that. Okay, we hypnotize. That's what she said before she was even in Congress, talking about the Jewish people, talking about AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. And then when she was in the Congress, the audacity, she indulged in the traditional type of hate that goes back to the literally, you know, thousands of years ago. You know, the Jews control things. You know that. Do you know that? They control the media. That's why I'm so thrilled with the New York Times, the most hurtful newspaper, the most dangerous newspaper for the well-being of the Jewish people and the well-being of the state of Israel. You know, the Jews they control the media, they control the banks, we control everything. The 15 million Jews in the entire world, we control everything. So when Omar indulged a couple of years ago as a member of the United States Congress in the Benjamins, remember that? The Benjamins, the money, and dual loyalty. She spoke about dual loyalty. I'll never forget when Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats, you know, Democrats talk about, they talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk, basically. You know, they talk in highfalutin language about justice and about righteousness and this and that. But when it came to Omar and the Benjamins and dual loyalty, and I remember they were going to pass a resolution. They were going to do the right thing. They were going to pass a resolution condemning Omar. And I think for those who remember, and we tend to forget, it never happened. I remember it was a Monday. They were going to do the right thing. By the way, Republicans who get criticized very often, very unfairly. The Republicans have had one or two incidents in their party where they had, you know, issues with certain people saying certain things, behaving in a certain way. And guess what? The Republicans dealt with those people. They did the right thing. One person they removed from all of his committees, okay? But when Nancy Pelosi, on Monday, they were going to pass a resolution condemning this woman, Omar, for the hateful language, by the way, hateful language has tremendous repercussions. You know, today with social media, you say something, it's all over America, it's all over the world. And a lot of people out there, you know, they don't need much of an excuse to beat up on a Jew, to be angry and to find a Jew and beat up on them. And Nancy Pelosi was going to do the right thing, and it never happened. Because she had so much support within the radical part of the Democratic Party. She had so many people who, you know, demanded that she not be criticized. And the Democratic Party caved in, unfortunately. And, you know, I'm sure you're aware, I happen to be a Democrat. And I've been a Democrat all my life. But, you know, I've never been a blind Democrat. When Republicans are better for us, for America, I support a Republican. Wouldn't everybody do that? I mean, if you're a registered Democrat, does that mean you automatically vote for a Democrat? I can understand you lean towards the Democratic Party. That's okay. That's cool. That's fine. But aren't there any Republicans who you think are more effective and better in terms of the things you care about? So, you know, and I've done that all my life. You know, I'm a Democrat. I support Democrats, but I've supported quite a few Republicans when they were better for my country, my city, my state. But the anti-Semitism, you know, I think about what's going on. I think of this hate that 2 weeks ago when I had just come back from Israel, there was a day of rage. You know, the only time I hear of day of rage is really in the Middle East. The Palestinians have days of rage every now and then, where they, get into confrontations with Israeli soldiers, and they do all kinds of violence takes place. The first I didn't know about a day of rage happening in America. Now it's become a regular thing. We have the day of rage by Americans, Muslims, Arab. What can I tell you? That so we saw this thing, that there was going to be a day of rage outside the Israeli consulate in New York, and the thing that appeared in social media actually told people like me, stay away, it's not safe. But I went with my wife, actually, because I needed to see the day of rage. And what I saw was 300 young Muslim Americans, I imagine, filled with rage, filled with hatred, filled with looking for the opportunity to beat up on a Jew, which had happened many, many times, in Vegas, in California, in New York. I mean, you pick the part of the country. I mean, we just had a situation, I think it was exactly 1 week ago. We had a rabbi in Boston sitting outside of his synagogue, sitting on the steps in America. And the next thing that happened, and by the way, a day camp was actually, young people were inside that building where the rabbi was sitting. And this young person, I don't remember his age, he may have been 18 years old, from Egypt. I think he's not legal here in America. He went over to this person, this rabbi, who was clearly identifiable as a Jew with the beard and what he was wearing and so on and so forth. And it was a synagogue. You had the Hebrew and so on and so forth. And he literally took out a gun. He tried to get this person into a car. He believed, this rabbi, that he was going to be kidnapped and killed. He ran away and he was stabbed 8 times. I mean, we've had so much hate, violence, I cannot tell you how many people that I meet on a regular basis, here in New York in particular, young Jewish families, middle class, they have beautiful homes, they're professionals. How many people say to me, Dov, is there a future in America? Is there a future in our community? This is what they asked me. It breaks my heart even to hear this kind of language. We're living in America, for God's sake. But for most people, they read about anti-Semitism, they may watch a video, and they may cringe and see someone being belted, someone being stabbed. We know what happened in Jersey City a year and a half ago, where people were murdered because they were Jews. We know what happened in Monsey, New York on Hanukkah, the holiday of candles, where people were stabbed. Multiple people were stabbed. For most people, they see it, they cringe, they react, they say, oy vey, or whatever they say, whatever language. But when you are the victim of anti-Semitism, even walking down the street and being called a dirty Jew, or being told that Hitler should have finished the job, the kind of things that you hear so often being said by sick people who are filled with Jew hatred. When you are the victim, when you are this guy Borgen, who was beaten up in Manhattan and ended up in the hospital with a concussion, or the man in Las Vegas who was beaten up and had a concussion for no reason because he was a Jew, those people are affected for life. They live that violence for the rest of their life, and it has tremendous, tremendous repercussions. People asking me, or people saying to me, with the violence they watch unfolding, are we living in pre-Nazi Germany and America? when, for those who know the history, before they began to murder Jews, 10,000 a day, each and every day, by the way. It's hard to believe, right? Just a number, 10,000 every single day because of Jew hatred. That's it. That's all it was. It's the effects on people, the repercussions. In Nazi Germany, it began with graffiti. It began with breaking windows, destroying property. And then it went to beating up on people, beating up on Jews because they were Jews. And ultimately, we know what that led to. Now, I am not in any way implying that, God forbid, that that's what's happening in America. But people, too many people feel that way, I can tell you. Too many people see what's going on. When you have the halls of the United States Congress, when you have members of the United States Congress in 2021 contributing to the hate that's going on in our streets by the language that they use, by the accusations that they make against the people of Israel. I was talking before about the war recently in Israel. When I was there, I just couldn't figure out what Bernie Sanders didn't understand about that war. Who the good guys were, who the bad guys were. Part of the problem was, and this is rather incredible if you think about it. Think about this. One of the issues during the war recently was how many Jews died? How many Jews were killed by missiles? Oh, only 12? Not good. 12? No, not good. If 100 Jews would have been murdered by those missiles, or 200, Bernie Sanders would have felt okay about that. He would have said, okay, I understand why Israel needs to defend itself. What does the world not understand? And I mean the whole world, basically, almost without exception, that a nation being attacked with missiles, 4,500 during that short period, 4,500. And by the way, every single missile that was shot towards Israel was meant to murder men, women, and children. Every one of them. The fact that there's a defensive shield, the fact that only 12 Jews died, we should apologize for that? There are a lot of people in this world who love the Jewish people when we die, when we're being killed, when we're being murdered. The New York Times has a lot of sympathy for Jews when Jews are victims. Well, you know what? We've been victims enough. We've given enough. We're not giving anymore. And the Jewish people are strong, with all the problems. I have to tell you, with all the problems and all the difficulty, and it's very disconcerting, and it's horrible to watch what's going on. People roaming the streets. Recently, one of the perpetrators of the attack on Mr. Borgen in New York was released from prison faster than the police officer got out of the precinct. I mean, the guy beat up, attacked this young man because he was a Jew. By the way, all the attacks that have taken place against Jews during this period of time, not one Jew was asked by the perpetrator, are you a Zionist? Are you a Zionist? Because, the excuse is, we love Jews, we just don't, it's the Zionists we don't like. But all these people who have been attacked, nobody asked them if they were Zionists, if they wore a yarmulke, if they had a Star of David. If they looked Jewish, that was good enough. You're a Jew, we beat the hell out of you. And that's exactly what has been going on in this country. And unfortunately, I can't say, okay, there's a problem, but America is dealing with it. The Biden administration is dealing with it. There was a representative of the Biden administration who advised Jews in America. Again, a lot of this stuff doesn't get much attention, unfortunately. But there was someone who represented the Biden administration who told Jews, if you feel unsafe, take off your yarmulke. That's what they did in France. Don't wear a yarmulke. If you got what do you do if you have a beard? You take off your beard, you shave, what do you do? So is a very sad reality out there. And what hurts and bothers me more than anything is the good people, the Schumers of the world. I mean, Senator Schumer, right? Everybody knows who he is. Majority Leader of the United States Senate, one of the most powerful people in this country. I want to share with everyone something about Senator Schumer you may not know. If you've ever listened to him in a synagogue or Jewish community center, I listened to him hundreds of times in my life. He would always come and tell the people he was speaking to, do you know what my name means? Schumer, Schumer, my name is Schumer. What does Schumer mean? Well, in Hebrew, the word Schumer means shomer, watcher. And Senator Schumer would tell audiences for the past 25 years, I am the watcher of the people of Israel. My name Schumer means shomer. I will be there for the Jewish people. Well, with people like Schumer, God forbid, you can end up with the tragedies of the Holocaust. Where is Schumer? Where is Jerry Nadler? Where are so many other members of the Democratic Party who they know what's going on? They understand, they see what's going on. I mean, what will it take for them to wake up? The Democratic Party is slowly morphing into the party, the Corbyn party in England, for those who know their history. In England, that you have the Conservative Party, you have the Labour Party. Well, the Labour Party in England had become so anti-Semitic under Corbyn, who was the leader, up until about a year ago or 2 years ago. I mean, anti-Semitism out of control, my God. Members of the Labour Party saying the most horrendous things about Jews, about Israel. Corbyn, the leader of the Labour Party, considered Hezbollah and Hamas, these two terrorist organizations, to be his buddies, to be his friends. It took a long time for well, you know what it took? For the Labour Party in England to get defeated by the Conservative Party. So I don't know if I can hope for the same thing here in America in 2022. But what's going on right now in terms of anti-Semitism, in terms of Jew hatred, in terms of the fact that people in the Democratic Party, the leadership, is not doing what they should be doing. One standard for hate, one standard for racism. If it's Jew hatred, if it's hatred against other groups, doesn't matter. Hate is hate, and it is dangerous and goes against the principles of our great country. But that is not the case at the present time. And, when people talk about, how much time do we have? Is there a future in America? I'm not sure. I can't tell you. We have nothing to worry about. Nothing could ever happen in America comparable to what happened in Europe. I can't say that. I can't. Because my mother, living in Czechoslovakia, thought she would live there forever with her family, and that everything was wonderful and everything was beautiful. And the Jews who lived in places like France, and Jews who lived in so many other countries in Europe, all over Western Europe, who at the end of the day, were rounded up and taken to concentration camps and murdered day in and day out, murdered. So America, greatest country on the face of the earth, we've got serious problems and a lack of leadership within the Democratic Party. When you have, as I said, the Schumers, the Nadlers, and everyone else, so many other people, not doing the right thing, it becomes about politics. It shouldn't be about politics. Hate should not depend on what party you are a member of. One standard for hate. When it comes to anti-Semitism, it shouldn't matter if it's a Republican or a Democrat. Democrats were just so organized to attack everything about Donald Trump. Everything. If he looked at you the wrong way, he was a racist. And people, who were close to him. But the Democratic Party is failing. And this is the greatest concern that I have. But I want to tell everyone out there, we don't give up. We never give up. We try to do whatever we can. I'm a person who, I believe in God. But, God doesn't help you unless you help yourself. You got to do your part. You got to be involved. Support the work that we are doing in Americans Against Anti-Semitism. Go to americansaa.org and join us. Be part of things. For those who have been watching us the last 2 years, and I just let me promise you, I don't want to talk about it right now, but we are going to be doing some very dramatic things in the coming weeks. Very dramatic things are going to happen, but we need to not be afraid. So many people in the Jewish community who become victims are afraid to speak out. They're afraid. They come to me, they tell me stories of what happened to them at work, and I say, can we take your story public? Can we deal with it? Can we tell America about what happened to you? And they say, I'm afraid. You can't use my name. And if I can't use your name, it didn't happen. Because, so something needs to change. And there's a lot of work to be done. And we're trying to do whatever we can to make a difference in this great country. My parents came to this country after the Holocaust, straight from the gas chambers. My mother, my father, they met after the war. They got married. They didn't, no heavy dating, they were happy to survive hell on earth, got married, came to America. My father, struggled, worked 6 days a week, had a fruit store, to make a living for his family and give me an opportunity to go to school and to be able and to have the opportunity to run for office and, and so on and so forth after what they went through, which is beyond our comprehension. I mean, how can we even understand, people who survived living with the memories of what happened to their parents, what happened to their siblings, what happened to their communities, what happened, it's just beyond our comprehension. And if we are not careful, terrible tragedies can happen. We can't take things for granted. We can't say, it can never happen here. By the way, no one says that anymore in the Jewish community. The Jewish community is afraid all over America. If you're honest, something is terribly wrong in terms of anti-Semitism. So look, we got to continue to fight. We got to continue to stand up. And most important, not to be afraid. You can't be afraid. If you're afraid, you lose. The bad guys win automatically. They want you to be afraid. We're not afraid in Americans Against Anti-Semitism. We're not afraid of anybody. Maybe, no, not maybe, but God. We're afraid of God, but that's really it. So, that's a little bit of, I'd love for people to ask questions about anything relating to Israel, relating to, what's going on in this country. All this hatred, where's it coming from? It didn't suddenly happen as a result of the war in the Middle East a few weeks ago. The anti-Semitism from 2 years ago, young people beating up on Jews. Where'd it come from? What are they learning at home? What are they learning in, the leadership of the community? It's coming from someplace, this hatred towards Jews. You don't even know the person, but that's a Jew. I'm going to beat up on that person. You get satisfaction. You're proud that you're beating up on a Jew. It's very, very sick and very dangerous.
Well, thank you for all the information, and you covered a lot. If you would give me a few seconds, maybe a minute. At the beginning, you mentioned that you've never seen such a wave of hate toward Jews in your life. I just wanted to say, for me, it's like deja vu. I am seeing it again. I grew up in Islamic Republic of Iran after revolution. Everywhere I went, and anyone else, on the streets, on the walls, there are burning flags of America and Israel. As you go into any federal building, on the stairs, you step on paintings of Israeli flag and American flag. At a school every morning, they make you stand on the line and chant death to Israel and death to America. In your Quran class and religion class, they drill the hate of Jew into your head. So I grew up watching the ultimate hatred toward Jews solely based on the fact that they are Jews. I was never given another reason. I wasn't given the, you know, AOC reason or Ilhan Omar that they control everything. No, no, no. I was given the reason. Look, in the Quran and in the Hadith, it says kill all Jews and that will be the day of peace.
Right.
And my fear is I am watching it happen here in America. So I guess without taking too long, I just want to let our audience know that as an ex-Muslim coming from an Islamic country, I can absolutely agree that the Jewish community in America should most definitely take this threat very serious. And the rest of Americans just, it's not about who's a Jew, it's not about who's an ex-Muslim. This is about Americans backing Americans up.
Right.
Fellow Americans need to stand up against any discrimination against their fellow Americans. When everybody's worried to run out and say, oh my goodness, this woman was forced to remove her hijab to be identified at TSA. That is so bad. How come nobody's minding the fact that they're telling Jews to remove what it identifies them as Jews? That's okay. And that is, I think that's where you go with saying there are double standards when it comes to anti-Semitism.
Right.
If something like what happened in Colorado, God forbid, if a Jewish person attacked a supermarket on the night of Eid with Muslims shopping for their holiday, oh boy, we would never hear the end of it.
You are so, I mean, you are so on target. All you have to do is just take the word Jew out and just turn it around and make it, you know, put the word Muslim, put Black or Latino or gay.
Illegal.
Exactly. And just imagine, we all know, I mean, no one is going to argue about this. The media would be talking about it and never end talking about it. And there would be investigations and the Justice Department and everything else in America would function. You know, we got to find out, we got to deal, we got to be tough, we got to this and we got to that. When it comes to, unfortunately, to the Jewish people, that is not, it just isn't treated this, it isn't treated the same way, unfortunately. And that is, you know, it's sad. It's very, very sad. But I don't want to give anyone the impression, you know, I love America, and I'm a very proud Jew. And being part of the Jewish people, I want you to know it's the greatest thing to be part of this club, the Jewish people, even with all the Jew hatred. We'll deal with it. We're not going anywhere. I just want to tell all, you know, people who hate Jews, you know, we're not going anywhere. You've done everything in the world to hurt us, the pogroms, the Holocaust, you know, all the hate throughout the centuries. You know, it's been painful, no question about it, but we're here. And we have a state of Israel that is a wonderful country that is, you know, I don't want to use the word a powerful country. That's not the important thing, okay? That is true, but that's not what's important. The advances of this country, this little country, by the way, 9 million people, 7 million Jews, that's all, that's the whole country, okay? The advances of this country, its standard of living, my God, you know, ahead of most of Europe these days. You know, in spite of all the difficulties, in spite of all the challenges, in spite of 4,500 missiles falling on the people of Israel, and people having to run to shelters. And by the way, you need to run to a shelter. AOC, if she was in Tel Aviv, would run to a, believe me, she'd run very fast. She'd put on her sneakers and run very fast to a shelter, as would Talib and Omar, because you don't know the missile that's coming in. There's no guarantee it's not going to hit you. It's not going to fall right next to you. You don't know. Thank God for Iron Dome. Thank God for that. And by the way, if not for Iron Dome, you know what would, there wouldn't be a Gaza left anymore. Let me explain why. If Iron Dome was not there, and the terrorist organization Hamas, terrorist organization, were sending missiles into Israel, and they couldn't be stopped, and they were actually falling on Israel, there'd be unbelievable number of casualties in Israel. And I have no doubt that Gaza would be wiped off the map, because a country must defend itself. America would defend itself if America was under attack, as would the French, as would the English, and every other country in the world. You know, some countries are very good at preaching to Israel. You know, you're overreacting. You know, I slapped you, you could slap me, but don't do anything more. I punch you in the face, you know, don't overdo it. What American would tell the American government if we were under attack with missiles? What person in America would tell the American government, you know, defend us, but, you know, nothing too serious, nothing too harsh. We as Americans, if we were under attack, we would demand that our government do everything in the world to protect us, whatever it takes. So again, the double standard when it comes to Israel, and by the way, the people of Israel, the political, political parties in Israel, from the right, center, left, they all are united on this. There's no differences when it comes to Israel protecting itself. There are no differences when it comes to Iran developing a nuclear weapon. It doesn't matter if it's Lapid, Netanyahu, Bennett, doesn't matter, or Meretz, the extreme left. Everybody understands the danger of Iran. They understand because they are in the front lines. They get it. But, you know, we live in a world where, look, we have to read history. We have to read the period of Chamberlain, you know, the leader of England who went to visit with Adolf Hitler to avoid war. Nobody wanted war. I understand. War is the worst thing in the world. And Neville Chamberlain returned to England after meeting with Adolf Hitler, who was laughing at him behind his back. And he came back to England and what did they say? Peace in our time. The New York Times, the Washington Post, and every newspaper in the world praised Chamberlain as one of the great leaders of the 20th century. He wasn't a great leader for very long, okay? Because when you deal with the Adolf Hitlers or the Khomeinis of Iran, there's no great difference between them. We need to be strong. We need to be tough. Everybody wants peace. I would venture to say the people of Israel want peace more than anyone else because they are on the front lines. They're the ones who are most, you know, under the gun from Iran and the potential for nuclear weapons. The countries, the other Arab countries in the Middle East who are allied with Israel, they're the ones who get it. They understand. They would love peace between Iran and the rest of the Middle East. But they also realize who they're dealing with. And they realize that in order to make peace, you have to be able to trust the person you're making peace with. And does anybody trust Khomeini? Does anybody trust the new leader of Iran who was just elected, who has a history that literally his hands are filled with the blood of innocent people? So, you know, thinking that you're making peace and that you're making a deal and you're saving the world, we all want that, but it's got to be real. The deal that was made by Barack Obama in 2015 with Iran was a farce. It was a farce. It was ridiculous. It was outrageous. It was sick. But you know, a lot of people thought it was wonderful. The French, the English, the Chinese, the the Germans, and so on and so forth. You know, and by the way, the Iranians, they were thrilled. You know, what was it, $100 billion they got to spread their hate, their violence, their terrorism all over the world? We need to be strong. We need to be smart. And I'm very concerned about America. I'm concerned about, you know, President Biden is a nice grandfatherly figure, you know, and he's a nice guy, you know. Does anybody out there think we are being led by someone who's tough, that we feel comfortable with. He's a nice guy, I'm sure. I'll accept he's a nice guy and he means well. In the time that we live now, that's not enough. And I'm very concerned about the future.
Okay, so we have a little more than 10 minutes. I'm going to start reading you the questions per your request. I'm going to start reading from the toughest ones to the easiest ones.
Oh, I can't wait.
Here we go. So this question is from Stephen Mix. Said, when I listen to some white people on the right who get accused of anti-Semitism, such as America First, because they complain about Jews and Israel, they point out that Jewish Zionist groups like ADL and ZOA write hit pieces on them for opposing mass immigration, which those same groups push onto America. While at the same time, those Jewish Zionist groups insist on keeping a Jewish majority in Israel. So is that hypocrisy by those Jewish Zionist groups? And is it a fair criticism? And also, should those Jewish Zionist groups just butt out of American immigration policy and stop calling Americans racist for just wanting to preserve traditional American demographics?
So first of all, I appreciate that question and the honesty of it. I personally have problems with some of the Jewish organizations that are out there. It was mentioned ZOA. ZOA is more of a conservative organization. I'm not sure the person really meant ZOA, but organizations like the ADL, as an example, just to point out, the ADL, its main objective, its main purpose, the reason it was created was to defend the Jewish people. And unfortunately, especially the leader of the ADL today, Jason Greenblatt, who worked in the Obama administration, unfortunately, they get involved in everything and anything that, that I personally feel they should not get involved in as an organization. So I actually, partially agree with some of the comments that were made. If you want to get involved with the issue of immigration as an individual, go right ahead, say whatever you want. That's not an issue. But when you speak for the Anti-Defamation League, which is one of the most important organizations in America, and you're getting involved in everything and anything. I mean, I can't tell you how many, we actually in AAA have been critical of them at different times for some of the things they say. And by the way, they too are, very often the ADL only sees anti-Semitism on the right and has not done enough to speak out and do what needs to be done about the hate that's going on the left, unfortunately. So I actually agree. Some of these groups, like the ADL, are, for me, they are a serious, serious problem. They have so much money. I don't know what they do with it, to be honest with you.
Oh boy. Okay, here's the next one. This was from Michael, and he said, the growing alliance between Democrats and Islam seems to be the clear reason for increasing anti-Semitism.
Between who? Say it again?
The Democrats and Islam. So he's talking about the red-green axis.
Right.
The question is, how do we get through to Jewish voters and get them to shift politically? Because the majority of them still vote and support the left financially.
By the way, that's not such a tough question. I mean, it's a legitimate question. It's a question that I am asked in every interview I do on television and everywhere else. Why don't the Jewish people get it? By the way, the Jewish people that I represented in the New York State Assembly in Brooklyn and so on, even though they are Democrats, they voted for Trump in greater numbers than almost anyone else in this country. Unfortunately, and the question is a legitimate one, why Jews, when will Jews wake up to what's going on, the things we're talking about tonight? Look, I'm not here, I'm not a loyal Democrat or a loyal Republican. I'm a loyal American. I want what's good for this country. I mean, it's that simple. And when are Jews going to wake up? That the Democratic Party and what's going on with the the Omars and Talebs and AOC and Bernie Sanders and so many others. There's so many other names these days. The radicalization of the Democratic Party. By the way, we just had elections in New York for the city council. There are more than ever members who were just elected to the city council. Most people don't even realize. They're not even aware. It's a disaster for New York. You have more of the Talebs and Omars who were just elected to the New York City Council. Okay, it's a huge problem. I want to say that the majority of Americans overwhelmingly care deeply about this country, care deeply about anti-Semitism, and on and on and on. But unfortunately, most Americans are not as active as people on the left, right? You know, you say something wrong, the people on the left, they crucify you, cancel culture, they destroy your life. Where is the rest of America to stand up and speak out and say, we've had enough of this nonsense? I mean, decent people who are crucified for saying something or doing something, we cancel them, we destroy them. We want to make sure they lose their job. By the way, that is not true if it's coming from the left. On the left, you can say almost anything and get away with it. But unfortunately, people need to wake up. They need to be active on social media. Young people need to be involved. Where is our side? We're the majority. I remember, I think it was President Nixon, I don't remember for sure, but you know, the slogan of the silent majority. We need the silent majority of America to wake up.
That is true. And I think we really need to, I'm looking at some of these questions. You kind of answered a lot of them as you were answering other ones, such as, why are you a Democrat, or do you vote for Democrat? I think we are at a point in the history of our country that it is time to stop, really stop. This isn't about the left or the right. This isn't about Republican or Democrats. This isn't about even policy at this point. This is about a coup d'etat. This is about losing our Constitution, freedom, and liberty. Forget it.
Right.
Forget it.
Right.
Stand shoulder to shoulder as Americans and defend the Constitution that has created this beautiful nation. Put the rest aside. You know what? We can all debate our policies and who was the best president, who was the worst, after we take our country back.
Right.
What do you think?
Look, we need to respect each other. I have no problem standing with people who have different points of view on certain issues. And by the way, let me make this clear. You have every right to criticize Israel, okay? If you disagree with its policies, you have every right to criticize. But there's a difference between criticizing and basically undermining the very existence of the Jewish state. Is a difference between when you have the BDS movement, boycott, divest, and sanction, the BDS movement that is so popular among the radicals, okay? There's only one BDS movement in the entire world. They're close to 200 countries in the world. China, violating the rights of 1 million Muslims as we speak, right? Where is the BDS movement directed against China? Where's the BDS movement directed against Putin and Russia? Where's the BDS movement directed against so many other countries in the world that are violating civil rights and human rights that they don't know what the word democracy even means? No, there's only one BDS movement. There's only one country we want to boycott, divest, and sanction. The country of the Jewish people. That's being an anti-Semite. If you want to boycott, if you want to do this to 10 countries because you care about civil rights and human rights, okay. Only the Jewish state? The one democracy in the Middle East? I challenge anyone. Tell me of another BDS movement directed against any country in Asia, Africa, anywhere in the world. Only one, against the Jewish state.
Oh, if you don't mind, I'm going to add to your challenge. I also challenge anyone to show me one country aside Israel that is on the list of 50 Islamic countries to be wiped off the map. So 2 challenges out there.
Look, there are so many things that are so obvious, as you point out, but most people don't want to be confused with the facts. Don't confuse me with the facts. I know what's right. I know what's good. I know what's bad. You are so right. Countries like Iran and others that talk about, destroying the Jewish state. You mentioned something. I have this article that I was just looking at before we did this. Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah. Okay, this is not from a year ago, not from 6 months ago, not even a month ago, just 2 days ago. There are no people in Israel, only settlers and occupiers. Okay, that is not the West Bank, Judea and Samaria. That is not East Jerusalem. That's all of Israel. This is who you're dealing with. You're dealing with an organization like Hamas, this terrorist organization, that in its so-called constitution specifically says they don't want to talk peace. Well, let's make a deal. Let's make a deal of the century. No. They're only interested in one thing. And they say it, not Dov Hikind, not you. It's not us that are saying this. Their goal is to destroy the state of Israel. And you know what that means when you say destroy the state of Israel. Can you imagine if our enemies were ever successful against the Jewish people in Israel? Can you imagine what they would do to the people of Israel? So, there are some people who take issue with Israel defending itself, defending its people, which is the fundamental responsibility of any government. Number one, before anything else, whether it is crime in our streets, what's going on, by the way, we talk about anti-Semitism. What in God's name is going on in this country with violence, with crime in our inner cities, basically all run by Democrats? Oh, sorry, don't confuse me with the facts. What's going on? The shootings, the murders, the mayhem that's going on in our country like we haven't seen. And who's addressing that? Is it, I actually heard some people just a few days ago, I think it was the mayor of Chicago, Lightfoot, who actually blamed Trump for what's going on in Chicago? So when people behave in such a fashion, how can you even have a discussion? I would love nothing more than to debate people who are on the other side, real other side, and have in front of thousands of people, make me look bad, make me look bad, make me look bad. But they don't want to debate. They're not interested because they know what's right and what's wrong. And, that's very, very unfortunate when we stop talking to each other, we stop having dialogue. There are people, as you know, on the political right, if they are invited to a college campus, at Columbia University, NYU, or you name the university in America, they will be shouted down. They will be, their life would be made miserable. I mean, how do you explain that? How do you deal with something so ridiculous? The place where education is supposed to happen. Education means discussion, learning from having discussion, from arguing, debating. Okay? But you have a different point of view. I don't want to hear what you have to say. That is what is happening in America today. I don't want to hear what you have to say because I know better. That is a tragedy. That is a tragedy. So look, we need to not give up hope and hope that there will be change in the future. I hope the Republicans win back the House and the Senate. I really do. Not because Republicans were always so perfect, but because the Democrats scared the daylights out of me. They really do. And I'm a Democrat, and I'm not going to change registration. I'll speak out as I do, as I have all of these years, because I am so disappointed. My parents became part of the Democratic Party because the Democratic Party stood for something of what America was all about. But that is not the case anymore. at all. The best friends that Israel has, unfortunately, a lot of people in the Democratic Party, but Republicans are the best friends. I mean, Donald Trump, whether you were a fan of his or not, was the greatest friend that Israel has ever had since the creation of the state of Israel. That is just a fact, period. So, we got to be, I don't want to sound pessimistic. I don't want to sound down. I'm not. I'm full of optimism. Things may look bleak, but things change and things will get better. It may take a while.
That is absolutely correct. We are out of time, but before we leave, would you please let our audience know where do they go to support you, to get involved, and to stay in touch with you?
Okay, so AmericansAA.org, Americans with an S at the end, .org. You'll see our videos, you see the stuff we do. But as I said to you, we're very excited about some things that are coming that will get national attention in the coming weeks. And again, you need to be part of the fight. Don't worry about solving the problems of the world, just be part of the fight, be part of the battles. If you are, we will win the war in the end. But a lot of people don't get involved because, they're pessimistic. People say, what can I do? How can I make a difference? Every person counts. Support us, help us, AmericansAA.org. Be part of what we're doing. Tell us you want to be involved. You want to contribute. You want to be more involved, be involved. Let me tell you one of the, do I have another minute?
Absolutely.
Okay. One of the things we're looking at is all the anti-Semitic acts that have happened in this country over the last 2.5 years that you and I have witnessed. We've seen the videos, we've seen the articles in our newspapers, on television. Does anybody keep track of what happens to the perpetrators of anti-Semitism? Are there any consequences? You don't know, and I don't know, right? Nobody knows. I mean, I do know because we're researching that and looking into it. It is a tragedy what's going on. People who commit acts of hate, they get arrested. We see them on television getting arrested. Are there any does anything happen to them? Anything at all? We are looking into this and we will be dealing with this and we will report to the American people. But I can tell you, based on what we're looking at the present moment, you can be an anti-Semite and pretty much get away with it. Especially, just keep this in mind, especially on the left.
Very true. Thank you so much again for being here. Thank you for your time, your wisdom, and your honest opinion. We appreciate that.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. And to our lovely audience who stayed with us until now, we appreciate you very much as well. And remember, these webinars are brought to you by the David Horowitz Freedom Center and the Glazov Gang for free. So if you like to support these webinars, all you got to do is go to frontpagemag.com and consider making a 100% tax deductible donation. With that being said, stay safe and goodbye.